But yeah, so my talk today, I have to warn you, I had one version of this sort of planned out, and then something actually we have a Saturday evening sitting group at Missouri Zen Center, and something that Dr. Yoshida said sort of made me rethink some things. And oops, I'm gonna put okay here. And so I've kind of reworked it, so I hope it doesn't seem too scattered. We'll see. Wish me luck. Um, I did want to say that I just so appreciate I see these Sunday talks as a kind of almost like a study group for me, because we hear so many different voices, and all of them give you things to think about. And so I've mentioned this before, but so many of the comments, I kind of think about and incorporate, and maybe vice versa. I mean, that's just what happens when people talk together. So it's just really, really meaningful to me. And so the text I've been studying is the Metta Sutta, and I'm going to continue on with that today. Um, I've kind of picked it for a couple of this particular piece is a challenge for me, and I think that's maybe why I've been sort of reworking it so much. I mean, in my mind. But so today's topic, I'll talk more about that, is the piece that says easy to speak to, and I'll read that in a minute. But that sort of meta in general, I think is kind of a challenge. It's something I think about. And also another reason I picked it is because it's one of the really, really old texts, and feels to me, or certainly it did when I first started this practice. My thoughts are evolving over time, but it felt very different than the Zen we practice nowadays. And I'm just kind of thinking, well, what exactly is that? Is there a difference? How does that look? Just it's thought provoking for me. Um, and one of the things, I guess, as part of that, just how a tradition evolves over time is part of what I've been thinking about. And I just want to mention I've been reading this book, or I read it recently, called Ruth, A Migrant's Tale. I don't know if anybody's read that one, but it takes also a biblical story, the Book of Ruth, and the scholar Ilana Pardes um, looks at how this particular story has been interpreted through time. So from the early rabbis making commentaries, I'll read the chapters. Headings. So first chapter, the Moabites. So that looks at the biblical story itself, the convert, the Shekinah in exile, the pastoral gleaner. This gets into some of the sort of French sort of pastoralists and how they interpreted their story and art. The Zionist pioneer and the American outcast. So it takes this one story and just kind of looks at its evolution through histories and cultures. And so it's been sort of a way to help me think about our own tradition, and the same thing. Things change over time, and how that looks, and so on. And it also makes me think of Dr. Yoshida. We have a beginner's night, and one of the stories he begins, when we sort of introduce new beginners to, they might not be beginners in meditation or Zen, they're beginners in terms of coming to the center, but we sort of orient them. And he always begins the session with the story of blind men and an elephant. And so there's a king, and it's a very old story. The Buddha told it, and it's been used in various traditions also. And so the king asked these people who were born blind, so they never had the chance to see an elephant. I'm sure you know this story, but And so one person touches the side of the elephant and says, "Oh, it's like a wall." And another person touches the ear. "Oh, it's like a window." And the point is our perceptions of reality are all different. And but that's kind of how I see our discussion of our tradition, our own perceptions. But then also, it seems like there are all these different traditions, and how do they go together? And is there a sort of a unifying theme throughout the stories, or are they evolving and having different themes? It's a question I ask. And I'm spending way too much time on this, but why don't I start by, I'll read the Metta Sutta just to orient us, and then I'll talk about that one little piece that, yeah, I'm trying to go through and just kind of look at it very methodically, piece by piece. So that's what I'm doing. So I'll read it first. So the Metta Sutta. This is the version that appears in Christina Feldman's Boundless Heart on the Brahma Viharas. Okay. So she says, so to reach the state of peace, one skilled in the good should be capable and upright, easy to speak to and straightforward, of gentle nature and not proud, contented and easily supported, living lightly and having few duties, wise and with senses calmed, not arrogant and without greed for supporters, and should not do the least thing that the wise would reproach them for. One should reflect in this way: may all beings be happy and secure. May all beings be happy-minded. Whatever living beings there may be, whether weak or strong, tall, large, medium, or short, small or big, seen or unseen, near or distant, born or to be born, may they, without exception, all be happy-minded. Let no one despise another or deceive anyone anywhere. Let no one through anger or hatred wish for another's suffering. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her child, her only child, so for all beings one should guard one's boundless heart. With boundless friendliness for the whole world should one cultivate a boundless heart, in all directions, without obstruction, without hate, and without ill will, standing or walking, sitting or lying down. Whenever one is awake, may one stay with this recollection. This is called the best and most sublime way of dwelling in this world. One who is virtuous, endowed with insight, not clinging to wrong view, and having overcome all passion for sensual pleasure, will not come to lie in a womb again. Okay, so that's the text. It's a very old text, of course. Last few months ago, I kind of took up upright and straightforward and kind of looked at that. And so this time I'm looking at easy to speak to. And I guess in the Pali, Suvako Kasa. So I have to admit I'm not a Pali scholar. Dr. Yoshida is. He received his PhD from Columbia University in Eastern languages and cultures, and is familiar with Pali. So was able to help me a little bit, and we talked about it. I guess there are various In fact, there's a site that gives 21 translations of the Metta Sutta, and I look at it, of course, and have written all the translations of that particular piece, and it's all over the place. There are many, many ways that people have chosen to translate that, which I find really interesting. And they seem to come, I guess, because linguistically there's a connection, and sometimes, well, anyway, so one version is kind of well-spoken, of noble speech, that kind of feel, and then the other, so like words going out in that direction, and then the other one is easy to speak to. That's what Christina Feldman uses, and let's see, amenable to advice, that sort of thing. I mean, words coming in, and so there's a feeling, kind of, at least in my mind, there's speech and it's going in both directions. And there's a responsive, there's a like a feeling of responsiveness there. You're hearing and you're responding. And so there's a real feeling of connection there, and receptivity, responsiveness, that sort of thing. And that line has it's in one line, and it gives three pieces, which I think is sort of through poetic license, which is just fine, but maybe not real clear. The um, gentle speech is closely related to gentle nature and not proud or not arrogant. They're all kind of tied together. They're very closely related poetically. So that relationship between speaking and gentleness, presumably one of the ways you create an atmosphere of harmony and gentleness through gentle speech. And I think that's the idea coming through here. So the thing that Dr. Yoshida sort of suggested I look at, and I'm happy to, is Dogen Zenji, right? Described it. Well, before I go there, just I want to add one little piece that kind of informed my thinking. So I mentioned that I'm curious about how these traditions evolved, and one thing I noticed early on is that the cultivation of these mind states, these Brahma abodes, kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, as Delvin lays out, seemed very different from the approach of Zazen, which does not attach to a certain, like, you're not trying to do anything. It's a much more open, and things come and go. At least that's my understanding. And they feel very different. And I was wondering about the relationship of that. And through one of our other study groups, and a little shout out again to Onyu, who facilitated the study group on Tenzo Kyokun, I was reminded that Dogen also has a cultivation of mindsets, his three minds. So there's great mind, mature mind, and joyful mind. And for example, if you're Tenzo in the kitchen, you're in a position where you have to make distinctions in order to prepare your food well. And there's a cultivation of those mind states in order to be able to do that. So you have these two practices. You're in the Zendo, and there's also Tenzo work and other work, and they're related in community, in communal living, but they're different. And I'm hesitating here because I'm still chewing on that. But anyway, it was nice to see that and be reminded, oh yeah, Dogen does that too. So Dr. Yoshida was reminding me to look at Dogen Zenji's soft and gentle, soft and tender mind, and just kind of to use that as a springboard. See how I'm doing? Okay. And I was wanting to look up where he talks about that, and luckily, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This is where things might go blah, but he did the really kind of amazing to me thing. He translated. I put it in the spiral bind. Dr. Yoshida, I don't think I've shown you this. I printed out our text and just put it, I took it to Office Depot and put it in a binder. But this is the text that he translated. And it's Fukanza Zengi no Hanashi by Eko Hashimoto. And so it's a commentary on the Fukanza Zengi, and by Eko Hashimoto. And it's big, it's really big. And it's kind of where I got the idea. I'm not very skillful in this, but what Hashimoto Roshi does is go through the Fukanza Zengi and look very, very, very carefully at it. And I'll just by way of introduction, his dates 1890 to 1965. He was a student of Oka Sotan. He was abbot of a temple for 30 years, Ungoji, which I'm not familiar with, I'm afraid. But when he retired after being an abbot, he decided to devote himself to a close textual reading of Fukanza Zengi. And but at some point he was called twice he was called out of retirement by the folks at Eheiji, one by uh, Komazawa Roshi, I believe, to come to Eheiji and be the Godo, so that the trainer of monks. And so he did that for 3 years and then tried to retire again and then was called back again. And so he was one of the people who trained the monks who went to Eheiji. So that's where you go to practice, and then you might go to your own temple, but it's a practice place. Obviously, people know Eheiji, but and so interesting point. This was in 1947, I believe, that he was called there. And Dainin Kadagiri Roshi, this is a connection to us, studied at Eheiji at that time. And so he was very close he considered Hashimoto Roshi a teacher of his, and was his anja, like the person, I don't know, who tends to him. They had a very close relationship, and he had the job of kind of working very closely with Hashimoto Roshi, and so received training from him, of course, respected him very highly, again, considered him one of his teachers. And so at this time, he would have been hearing these lectures. So this is a collection of lectures that were compiled after he passed away, but he would have been hearing these lectures on the Fukanza Zengi. So it's just a sort of a meaningful point to me. So anyway, so I look, so you can search documents. So I looked up this idea of the tender heart, and so what Hashimoto Roshi does is it goes through the text, and then he uses that as a springboard to tell many, many stories and to look at the language and so on. I'll look at that more closely later, but he talks about this soft and tender heart in a couple places. One, he's looking at the part in Fukanza Zengi where the text is largely lacks the life path of liberation. And at that point, he tells this story of when Dogen Zenji, his heart mind was opened upon hearing Shinjin Datsuraku, the dropping away of body and mind. And he goes to the abbot's room and sort of receives a verification that he had sort of understood what that meant. And so Hashimoto Roshi is describing this, and then he refers to the Hokyoki. And Hokyoki, I'll mention that more later, but it's a record of conversations between Dogen and Tendo Nyojo, the abbot there. So he quotes from there. He says, the Hokyoki records the words of Nyojo, his teacher. The falling away of the body and mind of Buddhas and ancestors is, in other words, Nunanshin. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing this probably. A soft and tender heart. So he directly makes the link between Zazen and the falling away of body and mind, which is what Zazen is, and this soft and tender heart. And then, because it's a commentary, he sort of takes a moment and describes this word, Nyu, for soft, Nanshin, and my Japanese. He goes on, he describes the kanji that are used and where they're used before and so on. I'm not going to read that, but that's part of what he does, is he kind of really at a really microscopic level kind of looks at these words and what they mean. But that's one part. And then later on, he's describing the part in the Fukanza Zengi where he says, I'll read the whole paragraph that he's jumping off from, but he says, therefore, this will be familiar to you. You must stop the comprehending process of investigating words and chasing discourses. You must learn to step backward and turn your light around to reflect on yourself. Mind and body will naturally fall away, and your original face will manifest itself. If you wish to attain suchness, devote yourself to suchness at once. And so that's the paragraph he's looking at. And then the little part that says mind and body will naturally fall away is the part he's analyzing when he again refers to the soft and tender heart. And it's actually really long, so I'm just going to read a little piece of it. But there's a little conversation again. This is also from the Hokkyoki, so that record of their conversations. Koso Daishi asks, Koso, he, Hashimoto Roshi refers to Dogen Zenji as Koso Daishi throughout this text, and it's a title. It means high ancestor, great teacher. And it's a kind of an affectionate name, but it's obviously a very respectful name. So Koso Daishi asked after prostrations, how can we attain such a soft and tender heart? Nyojo Zenji replied, and he gives a quote, understanding and accepting the Buddhas and ancestors' bodies and minds falling away is indeed the soft and tender heart. So understanding and accepting that falling away business is the soft and tender heart. It is called the heart seal of Buddhas and ancestors. That thing's called the heart seal. And then, so Koso Daishi, greatly moved, made 6 prostrations. The body and mind falling away is further clearly understood and accepted as taught that the body and mind falling away is the soft and tender heart. To merge and melt into all things is the soft and tender heart, which is said to be all merit. Authentic transmission lies in making this the Buddha's and ancestors' heart seal and identifying with it. And it goes on from there. But so that's the piece. And for me, it's I probably just given what I've been thinking about for a long time, just seems really connected to the Metta Sutta, that sort of idea of gentleness and good speech, tender speech, and just the atmosphere that creates and sort of what it does to you and to others. I mean, there's a coming and going. It's goes both ways. It reaches out to people as well. So I've been, like I say, Dr. Yoshida just suggested I think about this last night. So I'm only beginning this to embark on this, but I thought I would take the opportunity, and I promise it will come around and relate to this. It's going to feel like like we're going to another country for a while and then coming back. But I thought I would take a moment to look at this text a little more, this text by Hashimoto Roshi, just to get more of a flavor of his approach. Again, this is Dr. Shida's translation. I edited it, so I had the chance to read it very carefully, which I'm just really grateful for. We haven't published it yet, so this is an unpublished. I'm reading an excerpt of this unpublished work. I don't know how it's gonna. It's very, very technical. I mean, it's technical even for abbots and monks in Japan. I mean, and so it's important. But I like, who's going to buy? Who's going to? I mean, it's so important to us, but for an academic publisher to, like, I don't know. But in any event, so his approach was. Is that he would, I'll just hold up some pieces before I read. So he would go methodically through the Fukan Zazengi. He's divided it up into parts, and he's given, so the text, and I think a lot of people aren't super clear, I certainly wasn't, that Dogen wrote this in classical Chinese, right? So right there is kind of a barrier for a lot of people. And then Hashimoto Roshi follows by giving 2 versions. There's a common reading. This is the reading that appears in the Soto Shu. It's like the text everybody gets if they get the official version. And then he gives my reading, And so he disagrees with that reading a lot of times. And he doesn't just say, well, I prefer to read it. But I mean, he gives evidence. And he's obviously a scholar. He's very, very familiar with the whole corpus of Dogen's writings. And so it gives alternate readings. And the reason he can give alternate readings is because if a text is written in Chinese, to recite it in Japanese, in Sino-Japanese, you aren't always really clear on how things are pronounced. And I didn't, because I'm not a linguistic, like I'm trying to learn Japanese for sure, but it was always, I was always unclear why these texts are so difficult. But there are multiple readings of these, the kanji and the phrases and so on, and the phrases are technical on top of that. So the fact that there are two alternate readings for this text is not at all surprising. And then we followed it. We gave the Romanji, like the pronunciation, if you were trying to read of the alternate text. And then he gives Dr. Yoshida gives a translation of that. And then the commentary, Hashimoto Roshi will go through and talk about the text and also why his reading is different. And this, he'll jump off to a story and tell a story for a while and then bring it back. And it's really rich and just wonderful and really hard. And I'm so grateful Dr. Yoshida took this on because it's not easy at all. There's anyway, so I'm gonna anyway, thank you. So I'm gonna read just a little portion on this that has to do with dropping off of body and mind, because that ties into what we've been discussing, and it'll give you just a little flavor. I mean, Hashimoto Roshi is he's interesting. He's extremely scholarly, but he's also, he's kind of funny at times. I mean, he's very human, and his humanity comes out in this. I want to make sure. Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to read kind of fast because I'm running out of time. Okay, so I'm just gonna read a bunch of this. Just so you get a feel for it. So, okay, so he says, having finished the outline of the introductory portion, so Fukanza Zenki is divided into three parts, and he gets the terms for those, like Jobun is the preface, that's the first part, and the true tenet of the right teaching portion, that's the Shoshubun, that's the main thesis, that's the second part. Now we're going to go into the third part. Having outlined those things, the sentences from here until the end clarify things about Zazen not yet explained in steps parallel to the sections so far considered, and universally recommend Zazen from all angles, because this is the universal recommendation of Zazen. And so this third part is where he recommends it to everybody, including lay people, and of course. That is, as these sentences are designed to spread the practice of Zazen explained so far widely, they are also called the concluding recommendation. It is to state the conclusion and recommend it to the world. This section is divided into 4 parts, and this is the first part. So he's going to look at the first part. And then I'm just going to read the little part that has to do with the section I'm going to read. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. But the thing he's commenting on, observe and appreciate that transcending the ordinary and going beyond the holy, passing away while sitting and dying while standing, all depend solely on this power of Zazen. And then the rest of it, you'll remember the transforming ability of a finger, a staff, a needle, or a mallet. And there are more of them, but he looks at each one of those one by one as well. And I'm not going to go that far. Okay, so the first part of the circulation portion is divided into 3 paragraphs. So he's laying it out. First paragraph says the person who cultivates Zazen is empowered by what is called samadhi power, and it describes how this power is manifested. In the beginning of the sentence is read, in the past it is seen, and it gives the Japanese katsute miru, wait, katsute miru in the common reading, but according to the example of Kosho Daishi in his Bendoa, they take the same Chinese characters and they're read a different way, observe and appreciate, and that's pronounced Shokan Subeshi. So he sort of disagrees with the reading. These words are to urge us to appreciate and observe well the questions and answers that follow, those things about the mallet and the staff and so on. I'm going to skip some stuff. Okay. So let us first savor well, transcending the ordinary and going beyond the holy. So that's a piece he's going to look at right now. When Koso Daishi was intimately learning at Mount Tendo Nyojo's place, he asked his teacher, Nyojo Zenji, I'd respectfully ask you, how is the falling away of the body and mind? Nyojo Zenji replied, the falling away of the body and mind means zazen, which we've also seen means a soft and tender heart. In earnestly doing zazen, one is parted from the 5 desires and the 5 coverings are removed. The source of the statements is the Hokyoki, which was mentioned before and must be well known. I'm trying to find out what I can cut because we're running late here. I'll try not to rush too much though. The Hokyoki is Koso Daishi's record of personal interviews made during his intimate learning at Mount Tendo. When on the occasion of any question arising, he would visit Nyojo Zenji's living quarters. And it gives a very long description of their relationship, the fact that they could speak frankly to each other. It's actually kind of touching. But then he goes on, Hashimoto Roshi talks about the 5 desires are those that work on the objects of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, or the cravings for fortune, sex, vanity, eating and drinking, and comfort and pleasure. So you have the 5 traditional senses, and then the 6th is the mind, is also a sense, and its objects are those things. Our name for the desire for fortune and the mind of vanity among the 5 desires represent all 5 desires. Oh, fame and fortune, they just cut it down to 2, but it represents all of them. The 5 coverings, so those are the 5 desires, and the 5 coverings are craving, anger, torpor, agitation, and restlessness, arriving from regretting these things and doubting the certainty of continuing zazen without tasting Dharma joy and Zen pleasure. A covering is an obstruction that does not correspond to Zenjo. And this kind of hit me because I the reason I mentioned I'm reading the Metta Sutta is because it's a challenge for me, and so I feel it. Like if I can't feel metta, there's some frustration there. Anyway, okay, but it gives a story. So Koso Daishi could not be convinced. So he asked this question: what's the falling away of body and mind? It means zazen. And then he says, in doing zazen, one's parted from the 5 coverings and the 5 desires. He said he could not be convinced because this is different from the thoughts made up from learning the Buddhist teachings. So Dogen Zenji was very familiar with Buddhist teachings long before he went to China, was a very educated person, had a big question and went to China to try to resolve it. And so he had been thinking differently, and this was a surprise to him. He still believed this was the ultimate tenet. Oh, the thinking so far learned was that defilements are themselves awakening. Now, isn't that weird? Defilements are themselves awakening. He said that, so Hashimoto's telling this, so I'm going to believe it, but it seems really weird. So obviously there's a historical piece, like something in the air at the time was this thing, and he had learned that, and he went to China and he heard this other thing that surprised him. He still believed this was the ultimate tenet of Mahayana Buddhism at that time, though he later criticized this teaching in Gakudo Yojin Shu. I'm going to skip ahead. Um, the mind and body fallen away, the piece we're looking at, must be the state of the highest vehicle, and every one of the Buddhist ancestors accumulated hardships for it. Koso Daishi himself came to China and was continuing in quite blood-staining hardships to physically witness it and present this question of the greatest matter now. So what is this falling away of body and mind? The person who receives this question was the original teacher Nyojo, whom Koso Daishi to whom he dedicated his total trust, as he was the great, unprecedented, knowledgeable one who made Zazen requires the falling away of body and mind a favorite phrase. Technical things. So it's just saying they had a relationship of deep trust. It was certainly the question in expectation of a wonderful answer that so moved his mind and soul that he crashed in making it a question. But the answer was felt to be unexpectedly common. So he was disappointed in the answer. This is all from Hokyoki, but it's just so nice because Hashimoto is kind of making it into this story. So Zazen parts you from the 5 desires and the 5 coverings. This is a disappointment to him. So much was expected to him about the answer that it was unavoidable that to just such a degree his feeling was exceedingly dissatisfied. Through the totally driven down answering words by Nojo Zenji sounded calm, and although they sounded calm, and they must nevertheless have profound meaning of them, but he could not taste them well, however much he chewed with his learning up to this point, and he could not crunch them even by exhausting his power, cutting the notable Zen masters of the time from one end to the other. So Hashimoto Roshi is saying this is an extremely educated person, and he has been unable to sort of get this question of his by this intense studying and practice that he's been doing. And so this is Hashimoto Roshi. He's kind of talking about, it's a little vague here, but he's talking about sort of the feeling of Zen practice at the time, at Dogen's time, and probably also our time as well. Talk about removing the 5 desires and 5 coverings is the ordinary talk of general Buddhist teachers. The ways to remove them include countermeasures, such as meditation on impurity to remove craving and desires, meditation on compassion for anger, etc. See, that's what I'm doing. I'm meditating on compassion because of all my anger issues. I'm gonna skip a bunch of this. So anyway, so this seems disappointing to Koso, as Koso Daishi had learned the Tendai teachings and meditation methods and was well acquainted with the 25 skillful means. It is unavoidable that he felt at a low-level skill to be told about parting from the 5 desires and removing the 5 coverings. It's difficult to forget a learned habit. And then I'm going to paraphrase now. I think that gives you a sense of, a feeling of how Hashimoto Roshi goes about this text, but we're running low on time. So I'm just going to say, so Hashimoto notices this, and Dogen Zenji asks yet another time, kind of probes a little on this question. And so Nyojo Zenji says, by the way, there are these 5 desires and 5 sense coverings, but there's actually Dogen Zenji says, well, doesn't that mean we're practicing elders tradition? Because that was a big question at the time. And Nyojo Zenji kind of answers and says, it's not really elder tradition. It's not really Mahayana. It kind of it's before that or beyond that. There's no difference between them. We make this distinction, but there's no difference. And he talks about so you have to remove the triple poisons. And then he says, Dogen Zenji probes a little bit more. And then Nyojo Zenji says, children and grandchildren of the Buddhas and ancestor first remove the 5 coverings and then remove the 6 coverings. So that's an additional covering. And a little early in the part I skipped, he puts in there this mumyo, which Dr. Yoshida translates as nescience, but you've probably seen it translated as ignorance or delusion. So what he says is by practicing zazen, you could look at the branches and leaves, these individual five desires and coverings. But if you look at the single one of nescience, of mumyo, of ignorance, just looking at that one removes all the other ones automatically. And Dogen is totally floored by this, totally surprised. And they converse more. You'll have to wait till you get the text to read all the interesting stuff about this. But the funny part to me is so he says, Koso Daishi, upon receiving this teaching, stood up and prostrated in gratitude and said, I've never heard such teachings as those of Osho today. Here, none of the elder monks know or speak about it. Today, great fortune. And he goes on a little bit and he says, in removing the 5 coverings and 6 coverings, is there a secret art? And so it says, even with all his education, he couldn't understand. And Nyojo says, well, what have you been doing in all your skillful striving? And so he says, you've been doing zazen for all these years, like a secret art. It's not a secret art at all. We've been telling you over and over and over, it's zazen. That's the Dharma of departing from the 6 coverings. For Buddhas and ancestors, having no stages directly pointing and singly transmitting is parting from the 5 coverings and 6 coverings. Coming with the falling away of body and mind, doing the skillful striving of shikantaza is the art of parting from the 5 coverings, 5 desires. There's no other thing. And I guess to me, it relates. I'm sorry that felt so rushed. I obviously, because I reworked this at the last minute, I'm kind of going very quickly. But the thing that was meaningful to me was that I guess I've always appreciated in this practice that there's not a lot of instruction. I mean, you're told, this is the posture, this is how you orient yourself, good luck. I mean, and it's not just good luck at all. I mean, but it's your practice and it's up to you to work it out. And it's a very sort of opinionated person given to bouts of anger and all the rest of it. I've appreciated just kind of give me like, I can do this thing. But at the same time, that's not, it's a tough practice. And in order to make it possible, you have to feel safe. And that, to my mind, is where this soft and tender heart and gentle speech comes in. Because if you don't feel safe, you're not gonna, you can't, it's very difficult to do zazen. So for me, they're related. And I'm obviously at the beginning of considering this more, but it's an interesting question. And I appreciate Dr. Yoshida's sort of suggesting I look at it, and I'll do more of that. And I'm sorry I've gone on way too long. It's like 1:15 already. So I'll stop. And if anybody has any comments, I'd love to hear them. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. This is a very timely talk that you've given for me today, because I don't want to take up too much space here, but it's been a question for me. Your comment about no difference between Mahayana tradition and elder tradition is very significant to me. And what is the connection within the two traditions, and how do we support each other in that, in those connections, and realize that the form within those traditions are different. And I'm wondering um, if you have, through your study in the Fukazazengi and the Metta Sutta, if you found any connected strands and threads that really support these traditions. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm totally thinking about it myself. That the only thing I could articulate right now was just that piece of, Zazen runs right through it. And, um, you know, at the beginning of Fukan Zazengi, a quiet room is suitable. So you create an environment that supports your practice and it's not dangerous. And then you do that thing. And that feels like a common thread. But it's exactly my question. I mean, and I'm obviously struggling with it. And there's some energy behind it, which I'm a little embarrassed about, but there it is. So yeah. I mean, is that help, or is that?
Yes, that's very helpful. And I enjoy and support your energy because I have energy too. And I think part of that energy is an expression of our curiosity and our desire. So I support your energy and I'm grateful for it. Thank you. And thank you for your response.
Yeah, Kyoku.
So I'm in a situation where one of my brothers is dying, and that'll probably uh, culminate soon. And he left some very clear instructions about essentially being allowed to die. Um, that, so that's kind of my background. And listening to uh, the beginning where you said this is an exploration, a kind of a meditation on this phrase, tender heart. So what I want to ask is, right now, what would you say is tender heart?
Yeah, I was, as you were talking, um, I was saying how I appreciated that there wasn't a lot of instruction. And it's my practice, and that feels very. I was hearing myself even as I was speaking, thinking, "Boy, that feels very isolating," you know. And then there has to be safety, but the thing that generated the whole stream that ended there was the fact of this gentle speech that went both ways. Um, Easy to speak to and also well spoken. And that's very much a connection. And there's a response element, there's responding, there's hearing and speaking and responding. And it reminds me of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world, is what was kind of behind there, which I didn't say. So I, I just want to be really clear that I'm not one of these people who's like, I'm going to do it myself. I mean, I am a little bit, but the recognition that there's the connection is there too, and they're together. And so a soft and tender heart is, I don't know because I'm still thinking about it, but I do know that, we've been, meeting for Zazen in the mornings, and you've shared your situation, and there's feels like there's a connection. I mean, Alan was saying, thank you for including us, and all of us together, thinking about this thing feels tender to me. And I hope to you. I don't know. I don't have an, maybe you're very
Well, I
good
know
at
it's kind of a hard question, but I just, it's easier, I think, to feel what it means than it is to say what it means. Yeah, I think I think it's the experience of tender heart that we can best clarify as opposed to definitions, because we could probably, well, sometimes the words actually get in the way. Uh, and it can look so different. It can look very, can look harsh, but reality is as it is. And sometimes that feels harsh, but stepping toward it is where the tender heart is, to be willing to be that present. It's not to have an idea of tender heart so much as experience the tender heart. And so thank you for the topic today. It resonates in this body and mind.
it's true. A couple of times Hashimoto Roshi says, for all his his book learning, he couldn't get. I mean, you're right. It's felt in the body. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I often refer back to a reminder that helps me, which is you can read about, study, observe, recognize how to get on a bike and balance. But until you get on a bike and balance, you really have no understanding of it. It's something that needs to be done, and nobody else can do it for us. So, yeah, it's very good to have all of you listening. Thank you. Thank you. I can feel your tender hearts.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Schmidt from Open Door in Madison, Wisconsin. And I've appreciated your talk. I've wanted to come to Sunday Dharmas for a while, and the timing just worked out today, so I'm so grateful to have been here or to be here. I've been hung on the word on suchness, and you said it. You used it once or said it once, and I'm part of a very small group of people who we have been studying Dogen's Moon in a Dewdrop for years. years and years, and we're on our third time through the time being. And suchness came up in our discussion, and I wondered how you were connecting it to dropping away of body and mind.
I'm not qualified to answer that question. I have the same question. Oh, amazing question. I wonder, Dr. Ishida, did you Dr. Ishida has some trouble hearing, but did you hear the relationship of suchness, inmo, I guess, is that well, suchness and dropping away of body and mind. Do I have that right? Would you have a thought about that?
No, suchness means just truth, true reality. And without dropping our body and mind, we cannot reach there. In nirvana, only in sitting, we as you know, the 4 stages of meditation. The last stage is really letting go of everything. We stick to our body and mind. That's why we are stiff-minded, not soft or tender. And so the word next to soft and tender is no excess pride, natimana. That is what we have trouble in this world. All the troubles and sufferings come from our stiff and too much pride. Like you see the wars and genocide and everything, because we stick to our body and mind, ego. How we can stop it? Just sit, stop our karma. And then only we can reach nirvana. And then become awakened from the long night of nescience. Nescience means, as Erin referred, no witness of nirvana. Because we are always in karma. So we are always with survival instinct. That means stiff self, trying to survive or win, conquer the world. But the Buddha said, conquer yourself. Only this is a way to get happy. As the Buddha, whether either Mahayana or Theravada, they all practiced. And the last word of the Buddha is strive and attain your goal. That is nirvana and awakening. And this is also said in many ways, like falling away of body-mind. Only in this way we become free from our suffering and problems, individually, socially, environmentally. So all through our discussion, I think this is the Buddha's advice, Dogen's advice, or Juchin's advice. Just practice. And taste the result of your setting, which steals our karma. And anyone can reach nirvana and awakening and become happy in holiness, or become holy, harmonious, and happy. So yeah, this freedom is not getting off from truth, but getting into truth, Dharma world, from ego or sin, separate sickness to holiness, holy wholesomeness, or becoming happy. There is no other way than this. The Buddha really told it and recommended us to practice.
Thank you. Does that help, Bonnie? It's better than I would ever. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to bring their voice into the circle to ask a question or comment before we close?
Just adding a little bit, suchness is truth, and only truth liberates us. This is a common understanding. Anyone, any religion, any time. So we need to let go of ego attachment, self. And in this way only, we can be satisfied. We can be freed from all suffering together with all. And this is to become friends with soft and tender mind. See, all the Buddhas, Gautama or Dogen or Jichin or whoever tried to practice, realized this, and recommended all the followers, anyone coming after. This is a Buddha mind, I think. Yeah, Dharma is nothing but suchness or truth. And only following or getting into Dharma from karma is a way to be liberated.
Thank you.
That is so beautiful, Roshi. Suchness, the only way through it, what I heard you say is with our karma, through our karma, then we can experience suchness. Thank you.
Yeah, let me add another short talk. Because this idea of karma is so foreign to modern people, especially out of Indian tradition. Indian people know this well, and karma is causing our samsara shifting, samsara suffering, suffering from a shift in permanence, birth and death. Everybody experiences, but we don't know where it comes from. That's why we are so much attached to ego, self, and fight each other. And so the only final solution is for everybody to understand karma. And that, as Buddha said, we are all karma heirs, karma owners, karma machines, but karma refused. So we can take in good karma, avoiding bad ones. And then only we can work together as friends in need. That's indeed. So first, we need to know and share this idea of karma, which drives us into three poisons of desire, divisiveness, and delusion. We need to work together as friends and solve our world problems. And this setting is the direct, practical way to solve this karma, stealing karma. That's why this awakened way is so important. Unless we become awakened, we will never solve the problems in the world. Let's work together as friends. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been an incredible talk and an incredible conversation. Thank you, everybody, for your presence. I'd like to just bring forward several offerings that are coming up in October. On October 7th, we're beginning a 6-week study group on Jijiyu Zamai. You're welcome to join us. It's going to be several of us co-facilitating this study group. On October 8th, there is a Building the Heart of Practice for the New Zendo at Hokioji. This will take place at Clouds and Water Zen Center in St. Paul from 6:30 to 8. And on October 18th, it will be the Fall Caring for the Land Work Weekend. So if you're able to join any of those offerings, please feel free. And then of course, there is because of your generosity for Hokioji, we're able to continue to support Hokioji. So if you're wanting to offer dana, there is a link on the Hokioji website. I'm sorry I didn't put it in the chat. I'll do that next time. And then I'd like to end with the 4 great vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Thank you, everyone.